Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome all those who are here to the November 1st, 2021 meeting of High Point City Council. Thank you for being here, taking interest in what is going on in your community. Thank you also to those who are listening online. For those listening online, I would like to inform you that all 9 members of council are present here in the council chamber. We will go ahead and begin our meeting, and the first item is to I would ask everybody please to just rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have a couple of items to do before we get to the public comment period. The first is a recognition for our Parks and Recreation Department, and for that I will, turn the Lee. Are you doing this? Okay. Lee Tillery and others will be making this presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Good to see everyone tonight. I'd like to introduce Michelle Wells. Michelle Wells is the Executive Director of the North Carolina Recreation and Park Association. I'm going to let her address you guys for a little bit.
Good evening. How are you today? Tonight, we are here to celebrate High Point Parks and Recreation Department. High Point Parks and Recreation has proudly joined the ranks of elite park and recreation agencies across the country by earning their accreditation through the Commission for Accreditation of Park and Recreation Agencies, what we call CAPRA, which is part of the National Recreation and Park Association. Only 14 park and recreation departments in North Carolina have achieved this accomplishment, and only 192 in the United States, which puts High Point in the top 1% of park and recreation departments around the nation. As part of the accreditation process, they had to demonstrate compliance with an extensive, and I'm sure staff would say a very extensive, list of recognized standards, and then they had to document all of these policies and procedures associated with them. Of the 154 standards, your Park and Recreation Department successfully achieved all 154. Quite an accomplishment. Accreditation demonstrates that a department is operating under the best practices for our profession. So at this time, I'd like to ask the members of the staff and the commission who are here to come up for just a moment. I think he's lining you up over there. You want to join me? So on behalf of the North Carolina Recreation and Park Association, the National Recreation and Park Association, and the Commission for Accreditation of Park and Recreation Agencies, it is my honor to present this recognition to High Point Parks and Recreation Department for being in the top 1% of park and recreation agencies across the nation through your accreditation. Congratulations.
Yay, great job.
There you go, Lee. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I also have another announcement to make. We didn't get it to you in time to get it on your agenda because it was a bit of a surprise.
All
So I'm also here to recognize Marshall Newsom, who is the chair of the Park and Recreation Commission, with our Rayburn Rip Jackson Award. This award is presented to a member of a local Park and Recreation Advisory Board who has enhanced their community's parks and recreation programs. It's my understanding that Marshall has served 5 consecutive terms. Where did he go? Oh, there he is. He's 5 consecutive terms on the local advisory board here. He represents the interest of citizens with the highest level of commitment, focusing on the entirety of the city's needs and best interest. In addition to leading their monthly meetings, he has assisted the department with multiple planning processes and passing of a bond referendum. He is a hands-on leader and volunteer while leading by example and stressing involvement and commitment by his fellow commissioners. He makes a sincere effort to get to know and engage with the department staff and thank them. As a strong advocate, he is aware of the Parks and Recreation impact on the community as a whole and is involved in the decisions to support that. Our awards presentation is done somewhat where we don't reveal the name of the winner and towards the end of the recognition. And it's my understanding that Marshall was very impressed with the list of credentials that was being read about the person who we were honoring. So as our presentation continued, we started talking about not only what he does with the local park commission, but we talked about his role as being an Army veteran and being an executive at Aetna. And that's when I think he realized, hey, this is me. He and his wife, Angela, pastor the Providence Church of God in Christ here in High Point, and as stated in his nomination, above all else, he is the most genuine, committed, and engaging of community leaders. It is our honor to present the Rayburn Rip Jackson Award to Marshall Newsom, who is the chair of the High Point Parks and Recreation Commission. Marshall.
Hey, Jay.
Okay, get down there.
All right. Sorry, it's a bit of
What
a
about
maze.
Lee? Can we get Lee in there as well? Or maybe not Lee.
Great job, Marshall.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much for letting us be here tonight, or letting me be here tonight to recognize your Park and Recreation Department and Marshall as well in front of their home community. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is our strategic plan update. I will begin by turning it over to Councilman Chris Williams, and then we'll recognize Councilman Michael Holmes for a update on our marketing and branding task force.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report will summarize the code enforcement activity for the month of October. During this period, the code enforcement, the LCE staff processed 24 minimum housing complaints, 59 new public nuisance complaints, and collected 314 signs. Additionally, for the month of October, the LCE staff recorded 32 zoning complaints. A total of 100 public nuisance cases were abated, 35 by the city and 65 by the owners. Two inspectors did work on Saturdays, the 23rd, and they collected 132 signs. 6 properties out for demolition bids to be submitted, 3 properties waiting on demolition. There are 3 housing cases with the ordinance passed for demolition waiting for repairs to be completed, which again is 337 Wingo and 216 Underhill and 1004 Prospect. 3 inspector positions remain open and interviews are underway. During the report period, there were 400 total active cases, 230 active minimum housing cases, 82 active public nuisance cases, and 109 active zoning cases. Now we'll turn it over to Lori with
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. So we are bringing just another update on a house that was repaired on 607 Woodbury Avenue. We had originally inspected this one back on December 13th of 2019. We issued a hearing and an order, and the owner then sold the property, which happens. And we did not have a list pendants recorded, so we had to start the case over again. But the new owner got their notices, and they applied for their permits in February of 2021, and they just received their final CO. And this is what the house had originally looked like when we started our inspection. So that was back in 2019. And this is what it looks like now. They did a really nice job. So, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Love to see that work. You know. All right, Mayor, that's all we got.
Okay. Councilman Holmes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Update for our strategic branding and marketing task force. We released our RFP, and we had 23 total candidates from all around the country. Staff has whittled that down to our top 5. Next week, on November 9th, we'll bring in those top 5 to do presentations for staff, myself, and selected members of the branding task force. And from that, we hope to choose the firm that will lead our marketing and branding effort going forward. So it's been a long process, exhaustive process, but I think we're rounding the bend, and we're going to have a really great product after this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is our public comment period. I have a list of folks who signed up to speak at the public comment period, but if you didn't sign, you'll still have an opportunity after I've called the folks on the list. When your name is called, or if you would like to speak, please come forward to the lectern. You can speak on any subject for 3 minutes. There's a timer on the wall. I ask you please to stick to the 3 minutes out of respect for other folks who want to speak tonight. If you're here to speak on a public hearing item, you'll have an opportunity to speak during that public hearing item. So there's no need for you to speak during the public comment period. Okay, with that, first person on the list is Linda Colliston. I hope I said that correctly. I do my best to pronounce names, but I get them wrong sometimes.
That's correct. Good evening. Thank you for having me, Honorable Mayor and honorable members of the council. My name is Linda Colliston. I live at 1064 Cantering Road, and my email is lcollestan@gmail.com. And I'm here to present a statement from the Baha'i Faith on racial justice, and also to extend an invitation to a Zoom that we're presenting to the entire triad, the city, and also the council members and the mayor. I am a member of the Baha'i Faith. I'm a Baha'i here in High Point, and also part of the triad Baha'i community. And I'm speaking about this flyer, this statement here. This is a statement put out by our national Baha'i community, and it covers the issue of racial justice. Basically, it recognizes a fundamental principle that to address racial prejudice and to create racial justice in society, the first fundamental truth that we all must understand and accept is the oneness of humanity, that we are one. What affects one of us affects all of us. What affects all of us also affects one of us. It's a fundamental truth, and if we can work from that basis, then we can begin to eradicate some of the illnesses and problems that come up with this issue, this most challenging issue of racial prejudice. In this statement, it points out, of course, that there will be time where we will have protest. That's understandable, but after the protest, what is it that we're going to do? We have to make a concerted effort and make a have a commitment in putting things in place to create, to foster relationships, to have regard for one another, to have trust in one another, and to work together in order to reflect racial justice where we live. Here in High Point, here in our community, here in North Carolina, also in the nation. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to, this year for us as Baha'is, this is a holy year. One of the principal figures of the Baha'i faith, Abdul Baha, came to this country and spoke about these principles when he visited this country. And what we'd like to do is, in this holy year, we're going to be having a meeting, a Zoom meeting that we'd like to invite you to. It's called the Day of the Covenant, and it's on the 25th, which is Thanksgiving. So we're going to acknowledge this day on the 22nd, which is a Monday, at 2 o'clock. We'd like to extend an invitation to you. I have the flyers for you that I'd like to leave with you, and also with the clerk. And if we can leave this with you, and we will have the Zoom that will take place on the 22nd. A presenter will speak just briefly, and this is going to be an ongoing conversation. So we'd love for you to make it if you can. We'd love to see you there. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay. So I think,
Yeah, if you'll leave that with the clerk, she can pass copies along
Okay.
to us.
there you are. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Since it's on the same subject, I'm going to go ahead and call on Cynthia Hall.
Yes, and I was here to support.
Okay. So you don't want to speak?
I don't need to speak, so.
Okay, all right, okay.
Appreciate the time.
Okay. All right, Larry Diggs.
Good afternoon. My name is Larry Diggs. I live at 1127 Biltmore Avenue here in High Point. I wanted to bring before you a kind of troubling situation that occurred to me and some friends. First of all, and then also question the policies that we have as far as policing policies. Me and some friends, I'm visually impaired. And so me and some friends, we had son that's visually impaired and son that's blind. We went out walking, and then we come back and we was heading home. And all of a sudden, we was in a van, and all of a sudden, this guy in a dirt bike pulled up beside us and started kind of just moving around like he's, want to get in front of us, and he put inside beside us, and then he followed us all the way to the first person we dropped off, and which is over on Bailey Circle. And this is from all the way up from, it was all the way up from, Main Street, all the way coming down like that. And he followed, and he just kind of got there, and when he got there, he got out, and he started messing with the mirror, and he started doing things like this and all. We called the police. The policeman came out, and he said, unless it's a felony, there's very little they can do about chasing this guy, because they have a policy that they cannot chase someone like that if it's just a misdemeanor per se. But this guy could have done many things. He could have had a gun, we don't know. But he was just kept irritating us and all. He went back out to the street, and he came back, and he just kept bugging us and all like this and all. And it was just a very traumatic situation, because we didn't know where it could have led to and everything like this. But when the policemen came out, like I say, they said that because of their policies, there's very little they can do. At one point, he was speeding down the street, and I think they went to see if they could catch up with him. I don't know if they did or not. But my point is I might need a little extra minute, because it was very concerning, because he just was very impolite, and I think he was saying something. I was sitting in the seat where I could hear him talk, but I couldn't hear what he was saying and all like this. But there's one other person here that can explain to you. They were sitting up in the front seat and saw what was going on, At one point, we wanted to understand the policies for the policemen and why they have that policy that they cannot, even arrest the guy or detain him in some kind of way like that. But they were saying all they can do is try to get up with them and talk with them, and I don't know if they ever caught him or not. But this is about, I wish I could remember the exact date and everything, but it was on a Wednesday night. And I just wanted to present that to y'all because, like I say, I don't know what's the policies as far as the policing and all like this, but I do understand that, right now that you're not supposed to chase a person, but unless it's a felony and all like this, but it was very, very disheartening because he just acted really strange and just act like he wanted to try to get somebody to come out and, say something to him about it. I do understand my time is probably up now, but I do want you to understand that's very concerning, and I understand there's other situations that have been going on in the city similar to this.
Thank you, Mr. Diggs.
All right, thank you.
I'm sure that the manager has made a note, and hopefully we can get some information to you at some point. Theresa Peel. I think we're about to hear a similar story.
Good afternoon. My name is Theresa Peel. I live at 700 East Fairfield Road, and I actually was in the vehicle that Mr. Diggs is talking about. The gentleman at about Cook Street, the young man on the dirt bike. Dirt bikes don't have any way that anybody can know who they are. They don't have license tags. So when somebody pulls up beside you, then you don't know who it is. This young man came, and I was in the passenger side, came up to my car, was close as this, reaching in toward my car, hit my mirror, knocked it out of whack, and he followed us all the way down to where we dropped off one of our people that were riding. I work with the High Point Lines, and we work with the visually impaired. I don't know whether you have any idea what it would be like to be in your home, and if you wanted to go to the grocery store, you don't have a way to get there if you don't have family. If you want to go walking, you don't have a way to go walking unless somebody helps you. This is one of the things that the High Point Lines does, is help people who need help. This young man scared me, and it takes a lot to scare me. But I didn't know what he was going to do. My husband was with us, so I felt secure. But if I, as an old lady, am taking somebody to the doctor and this happens with just me in the car, I would panic. Any other woman would panic. And we need to figure out some way. I mean, I've called the city, I know, 8-10 times, telling them about what's happening. This is the first time that this person or a person came up close enough for me to reach out and smack him, which I actually gave thought, but I figured I better not. This is terrible. They go down Main Street, they go, and I'm sure that you're aware of this because I'm sure I'm not the only person who has complained. This is a real problem. And if the city council can't do anything about it, who can? Where do you go? Do we go from the city to the state? Give us some help here. Help us stop somebody from being so rude, crude, and socially unacceptable as to try to run people off the road and not be able to be stopped. Because my understanding was the fact that he hit my car changed it from a misdemeanor to an assault. And we couldn't say who he was because How do you know? We need help. We need it really bad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will say for those here, that our police department is very well aware, we're all very well aware of what it is. It is a difficult situation to fix. But I do know that we've had some contact from our police chief that they are working on a plan. So hopefully we'll see some improvement in that area.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I would suggest, since that's not something we have reviewed, that we put that on the next Public Safety Committee agenda to review that policy, why it's in place, and that way it can be public information.
Okay, I'm sure that's something the manager can handle.
We can add it to the next agenda. I will say, one of the reasons that we have that policy in place is we want to make sure that we don't cause further danger to the public by engaging in a high-speed chase if there are other ways to try to identify whoever is causing the problem. A lot of times when you have a group of the bikes that are traveling along Main Street in a group, they'll go in several different directions. And in order for our officers to give chase in that situation, it could create more danger for citizens that are driving. But we can go through a review of that policy at the next public safety meeting.
I will say, it's a national thing. It's not a High Point thing.
It is.
It's nationwide, a trend that's going on.
It is, and it's happening in several of our neighboring cities as well.
And I would encourage you, if you have one of these,
Video.
use it. If this happens, get pictures, get it on video, anything that the police can use to help them identify who the folks are is helpful. So think about that as well. All right. Okay, next person on the list is Maranatha Quick Hope.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Hate to be coming under these circumstances, but on October the 13th, my daughter had an incident at Pro Nails in High Point on Fairfield, and the police were called. They didn't find any criminal act that she had done. On October the 26th, which was 13 days later, at approximately 4:44 p.m., Monica Peters called my daughter's phone, and she never said her name. She just told her that she was from the High Point City Council, and she asked her several personal questions. Was she working? Is she in school? What school does she attend? After she answered those questions, Monica Peters went on to tell her that she was calling to get her side of the story because she had already spoken with the business owner of Pro Nails and witnesses, and she spoke with the High Point police chief. He should press charges against you. When my daughter tried to explain the situation, Monica consistently cut her off and wouldn't listen to her, and went on to tell my daughter that what she did was wrong. She can't just go get a manicure and pedicure and run out without paying. This was not the first time she's done it, and that type of behavior would not be tolerated. Again, my daughter tried to explain. She got even worse, cutting her off and telling her, you don't have to have polish on your, she told her she didn't get her feet polished. She said, well, you don't have to get it polished to get your pedicure. My daughter told her that the polish change was the main purpose for her going. Monica then told her that a pedicure, she went into detail of what a pedicure entails. She said she didn't get all that. Monica cut her off again and said, I spoke with the High Point police chief, and he told me, no, she talked to the police officers, and they told her that she received a manicure and pedicure, and she don't even know why the police spent so much time talking to my daughter. They should have been talking to the business owner. She said she spoke with the High Point chief of police, and he was going to take out a restraining order against my daughter and press criminal charges for running out and not paying. She then hung up on her. I turned around and called her back to find out who she was and what her name was. First, she didn't want to give her name. Then when she finally gave her name, she said, my name is Monica Peters and I'm over Ward 3. She began hollering and saying she received a complaint from one of her business owners, and she called to get her side of the story. And I told her, no, you didn't, because every time she tried to talk, you cut her off. And so basically she threatened her, stating that they were gonna press charges against her, take out a restraining order. She tried to tell my daughter to go back up there and pay the man, but they trespassed her. So you're telling her to violate the law by going back up here to do something that you feel like she should have done when the whole situation had absolutely nothing to do with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quickhope. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak during the public comment period? Okay, seeing no one, then I will close the public comment period, and we will continue with our agenda. And next on the agenda is our Finance Committee items, and for that, I will turn the meeting over to the Mayor Pro Tem, Britt Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Our Finance Committee did meet at our regular scheduled time. Before you tonight is the balance of what we reviewed. It was a pretty in-depth meeting. Quite a few things I know you have seen in your package. A lot to do with infrastructure, build-out, and equipment through this one, but it is on a consent agenda, and I'm moving this to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Okay, so there is a motion to approve the finance consent agenda items. Is there a second?
Second, Holmes.
Seconded by Councilman Holmes. Is there any discussion on any of these items? Any questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, hearing none, then all the consent agenda items are approved by a vote of 9-0.
That's all for finance.
Okay. Next are Community Development Committee items, and those will be handled by Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item up is 2021-464, ordinance demolition of dwelling 2206 Gable Way. I will turn the floor over to Lori for details.
Good evening again, Mayor and City Council. The first property at 2206 Gable Way, we originally inspected on October 1st of 2019. And held a hearing on February 20th of 2021. No one appeared for the hearing. An order to repair or demolish was issued on January 21st of 2021 with a compliance date of February 22nd, 2021. The only contact we had from anyone about the property was an attorney did call and speak to the inspector in February of a law office in February of 2021, asking that about liens on the property, and stated they would be doing a closing, and that the inspector asked them to have the new owner contact him. As of today, it's still the same owner. That has not changed.
All right.
And they are not delinquent in any property taxes.
I guess just a side question. It looked like, did a tree fall on this house or something?
That's what I understand, as a tree had fallen on it originally, and then that got removed, and this is what's left.
All right. Thank you, Lori.
Lori,
Go ahead.
is this a duplex? This is a.
It is a duplex.
Is there any other questions for staff? Is there anyone here to speak for or against this item? All right. Not hearing anything, I'll make the motion to approve item 2021-464, demolition of dwelling 2206 Gable Way.
Second, Johnson.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval of this item. Are there any comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? That motion passes.
All right, next up item is 2021-465, ordinance demolition of dwelling 1206 Reagan Avenue. Once again, Lori.
This property we were made aware of through the High Point Police Department. We made an inspection on January 2nd of 2020. We held a hearing on January 4th of 2021. No one appeared for the hearing. An order to repair or demolish was issued on January 5th of 2021 with a compliance date of February 15th of 2021. The inspector did note that He spoke to both the sons of the owner, and neither expressed an interest in repairing the property due to the unpaid taxes and the father not having a will. Both were told of the minimum housing process, and that if the house was not repaired, the city would move forward with requesting a demolition order. And they are delinquent in property taxes in the amount of $5,669 from 2011 through 2021.
Thank you, Laura. Is there any questions for staff? Is there anyone here to speak for or against this item? All right, it's a shame. I'll make the motion to approve item 2021-465, ordinance demolition of dwelling 1206 Reagan Avenue.
Second, Johnson.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval of the ordinance. Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Okay. Councilmember Hudson, just checking, make sure you don't have anything for...
Nothing this month, Mayor.
Okay. All right, next will be the planning and development items. I'll be handling those. The first item, there's several on for public hearing. The first item is text amendment case 2105. So I'll turn it over to staff for that.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Chris Andrews with the Planning and Development Department. This item is a text amendment requested by the City of High Point, specifically the Engineering Services Department, to amend Section 6.3.2 of the Development Ordinance to give exemptions, or an added exemption for the requirements of a land disturbance permit. Trevor Spencer with the city's Engineering Services Department is here to give any context. But in short, there are some activities that the city has exempted from requiring a land disturbing permit, which is a permit that's reviewed by Engineering Services. Those exemptions, again, are listed within the development ordinance, and this request simply attempts to add an exemption for land disturbing activities related to an addition, an accessory building, an accessory dwelling unit, or accessory structure that does not exceed 1,000 square feet of disturbed area. So it's a relatively compact measurement. In going further, in staff's recommendation, this request is neither consistent nor inconsistent with adopted policy guidance, and the proposed amendment is reasonable and in the public interest, and that it provides relief only to specific development activities which are minor in scope. Furthermore, the amendment allows the city to continue to monitor land disturbance activities at the level that's required by the state, but also reduce the erosion control permitting and plan reviews required for residential construction permits throughout the city. These amendments are intended to improve customer service related to residential construction permits. So again, staff recommends approval of this request, as did the Planning and Zoning Commission at their September 28th meeting by a vote of 6-0. I'm happy to answer any questions of council.
Anyone have questions? Thank you very much. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will make a motion for approval of this item and state that the text amendment 21-05 is neither consistent nor inconsistent with the adopted policy guidance. Furthermore, the request is reasonable in the public interest because the proposed amendment provides relief only to specific development activities, which are minor in scope. Furthermore, this amendment allows the city to continue to monitor land disturbance activities at the level required by the state, but reduce the erosion control permitting and plan reviews required for all residential construction permit applications throughout the city. The amendments are intended to improve customer service related to residential construction permits. I think we all want that. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion on this motion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is text amendment 21-04. And Andrews,
Yes, sir. We've got another text amendment. This one is a text amendment that is part of our general amendments that we try to do once or twice a year. The city attempts to bring to the commission, up to the planning commission, then to city council, amendments that are intended to fix inconsistencies or errors or to propose new standards, all of which come to staff's attention just through the normal administration of a development ordinance. So this is our kind of routine maintenance of the city's development ordinance. The amendment for your consideration tonight includes 18 different sections grouped by topic. A summary of each of those sections is within the staff report, as well as the strike through and underline of the specific amendment language. Many of these amendments aim to give clarity or to attempt to provide some better description of specific topics within the ordinance. There are a few sections that I want to highlight and give some special attention. Section 4 is a proposed amendment to allow a commissary kitchen use type. This is a use type where food truck operators would return or prepare their meals or clean their vehicles. And this was a specific use type that was added through the city's small-scale manufacturing task force. So this is something that we heard from constituents. And again, to highlight, this does not propose any amendment to the regulations involving the operation of food trucks. So there's no change to those. Section 5 establishes a recreational vehicle park use type, and this is something that was spurred from a request from the Prosperity and Livability Committee of City Council. Staff researched similar standards for cities around North Carolina. I think it was the top 20 or the 20 most populous cities. We wrote a draft ordinance and presented it to the P&L committee at their June 23rd meeting. Again, this is a use that's only proposed to be within one zoning district and also has a number of use standards that go along with it, so it's pretty specific to its application. And then Section 7 amends the length of, the maximum length of multifamily dwellings within the city. We tried to give some kind of a graduated approach and say that the less intense districts have shorter building lengths and those that were more intense essentially have a longer building length. And that arose from a previous amendment that Barry Siegel, I think, had on adopting their plan unit development, and that came before council a couple months ago. But this kind of gave us some attention to look at our building length standards. So in all, the proposed amendments continue to make staff's efforts to make the development ordinance more user-friendly, consistent in its formatting, language, and terminology, and more error-free, and responsive to issues or circumstances observed through the zoning or land development process. And furthermore, these general amendments make the ordinance more user-friendly and flexible and supportive of the city's adopted policy guidance. The proposed amendments address necessary changes required to better clarify existing standards, expand allowable uses within the city, and provide consistent language and formatting. Again, staff recommends approval of this request, as did the Planning and Zoning Commission at their September 28th meeting by a vote of 6-0. I'm happy to answer any questions of council at this time.
Mr. Andrews, I have one question. Section 3, can you give me some background on the removal of the CZMS and CZMX districts?
Yes, those districts were established through specific plans of the city, so they contain a greater number of kind of specific or special standards, much like in the mixed-use area where there's no parking requirements. So those have kind of a heightened attention. So staff has not had any conditional zoning requests for those areas, and as far as I know, it was never intended that those districts were to have conditional zoning ordinances with them.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Anybody with questions for staff? Okay. I'll make a motion for approval and state that text amendment 21-04 is consistent with the city's adopted policy guidance because these general amendments make the ordinance more user-friendly and flexible and supportive of the city's adopted policy guidance. Furthermore, the request is reasonable in the public interest because the proposed amendments to the development ordinance address necessary changes required to better clarify the existing standards, expand allowable uses within the city, and continue to provide consistent language and formatting. Is there a second?
Second.
seconded by Councilman Williams. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the text amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Next is zoning map amendment 21-17, which is a request by COHAB to rezone approximately 3 acres from planned development core city district to a heavy industrial district and a heavy industrial district to an amended planned development core city district. For that, Herb Shannon will be making the presentation.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Herb Shannon, Senior Planner with the Planning and Development Department. I'll be providing you with a summary of zoning map amendment 20-17. And this is a request submitted by COHAB. They're requesting to amend a previously approved planned development district to expand the land area. The site's lying along the east side of West English Drive between South West Point Avenue and Phillips Avenue. That is an overview of the site. It abuts the railroad tracks, and surrounding uses consist of a mixture of industrial and commercial uses. Furthermore, the site is within the core city area, and the core city plans specifically designate this area as a mixed-use area. When initially approved in 2018, this site was approved as a one-stop shop for artisans and design professionals. The goal was to provide amenities for a year-round facility and a hub of activity in the core city area. That project has taken off, and the applicant is requesting rezoning to expand the land area. The area to the south, right here, was approved in 2018. They're requesting to expand that planned development district to include the northern portion of this block. Staff is recommending approval of the request. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this at their September public hearing and recommend approval by a vote of 6-0. Key points of note is all the previous conditions from 2018 are being carried forward over. So the goals of having this a year-round facility, limited market showroom will continue. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, by a vote of 6-0, the Commission stated the request is consistent with adopted policy guidance because the expansion of this PDCC district will continue the reuse of the historic structure, and the request is supported by the goals and objectives of the Community Growth Vision Plan and the Land Use Plan. The Commission also noted that the request is reasonable and in the public interest as the PDCC district meets the ordinance standards for continuing advancing city policy for redevelopment in this area as a mixed-use center as envisioned by the core city plan, and the Planning and Zoning Commission offers that statement for the Commission's consideration. Are there any questions of staff at this time? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Is there anyone here to speak for or against that item? Okay. Seeing none, I will make a motion for approval of the item, and I will adopt the consistency and reasonableness statement of the Planning and Zoning Board as stated by Mr. Shannon. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Peters. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the item, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Next on the agenda is Plan Amendment 2105, and then I think we also have an accompanying annexation and zoning map amendment case
That
for
is
this
correct.
as well. So, are you going to brief us on all three at once, or?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll handle the plan amendment, and Herb will follow with the annexation and zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor and Council, I am Heidi Galante, Planning Services Administrator with the Planning and Development Department. I will give an overview of the land use plan amendment, and Herb will follow. We are giving the staff presentations on these cases all up front, but they will need to be voted on separately. The applicant is proposing a single-family detached dwelling units limited to 7 dwelling units per acre. And the proposed moderate density residential classification supports this type of use. The request to amend the land use plan is for approximately 70 acres located on the south side of Cox Avenue and west of Jackson Lake Road, from low-density residential and restricted industrial to moderate-density residential, which allows between 5 and 8 dwelling units per acre. The subject property is outlined in black on this land use map. The area shown in yellow represents low-density residential. Light purple is restricted industrial, dark purple is heavy industrial, pink is light industrial, and green represents recreation and open space. Land uses in this area are as follows. To the north are single-family detached dwellings, a religious institution, and undeveloped parcels. To the east and west are single-family detached dwellings. To the east is Jackson Lake Road, and directly to the south is I-74. The existing low-density residential classification supports single-family detached dwellings up to 5 dwelling units per acre, and the restricted industrial classification supports office, warehouse, and light manufacturing uses. Cox Avenue is bordered primarily by residential single-family detached dwellings, and it serves as a collector street for other residential single-family subdivisions between Baker Road and Jackson Lake Road. The proposal would add both single-family detached and attached dwellings at a slightly higher density than is currently allowed in the R5 zoning district. There is a need for a variety of housing types such as townhomes and single-family homes. This area has been designated as a combination of low-density residential and restricted industrial since the mid-1980s. And the Employment Center District has been there since 1989, and it was put there prior to the construction of I-74, and it has never developed. This would be an orderly growth of the city with the extension of water and sewer along with the development of urban density residential. A change to moderate density residential, which supports different housing styles at a slightly higher density, meets a growing need. Staff recommends approval of the request to change the future land use designation for approximately 70 acres to moderate density residential. The request meets the goals and objectives of the land use plan, and it will be in harmony with the land use pattern of the surrounding area. Planning and Zoning Commission met on September 28th and voted in favor of this request by a vote of 6-0. Do you have any questions of me before I turn it over to Herb?
Thank you, Ms. Galante. Mr. Shannon?
Once again, Herb Shannon with the Planning and Development Department. In regards to the annexation and zoning portion of this request, this site is located within the City of High Point's extraterritorial area known as the ETJ area. This is a designation for lands adjacent to the city limits where Guilford County has granted the City of High Point zoning and building permit authority. The ETJ for this portion of the city was established in 1966. In regards to the annexation request, I would note for any members of the public that only this site that's highlighted in the green or teal color is proposed to be annexed. None of the surrounding areas are to be annexed. There were several calls with members of the public with that question. The applicant's requesting annexation to have access to city utilities for development of a proposed residential subdivision. This request for annexation is a logical progression of the city's annexation policy, as the site is within the city's ETJ area, and based upon the size of the site and its proximity to the current city limits, about a quarter mile, this is an appropriate expansion of the city limits. City services, as far as water and sewer, are available. A sewer line runs along the southern boundary of the site, water line within Baker Road, and city service vehicles are already present in this area. Thus, staff is recommending approval of the annexation request. I would note before I get into the zoning portion of the request, the zoning and annexation do not line up with the same configuration. This northern portion of the site along the north side of Cox Avenue, that is to be annexed, that is part of this application. However, that is not part of the zoning request. As this site is within our ETJ area, the city has zoning authority, and that area is currently zoned R5. So it is to be annexed, but the zoning will not change for that area. Are there any questions on the annexation proposal before I move on to the zoning portion of this request?
With that being totally surrounded by Guilford County, although the lines are there, do we have to do anything to accommodate the owners of the property to access? I mean, the lines are running there, but what we're looking at is consolidated inside of it.
Yes, the applicant, as part of any development approval, would have to receive utility approval. As I noted, sewer is already on the site along the southern boundary. They will be looking at extending water lines along the Cox Avenue right-of-way.
Hey, now's not the time to talk.
Any other questions on the annexation? Regarding rezoning, the site currently has a zoning designation of Conditional Use Employment Center, which is an industrial zoning district, and residential single-family 5. It's about 70 acres that is proposed to be rezoned to a conditional use residential multifamily 16 district.
Now's not the time to speak. There's a public hearing, you'll have an opportunity to speak then. Don't interrupt the staff while they're speaking. Go ahead, Mr. Shannon.
Rezoning is proposed for a mixed residential development, approximately 420 units consisting of single-family homes and townhomes. In conjunction with this application, there is a conditional zoning ordinance that is part of your package where the applicant has offered conditions pertaining to allowable uses and restricted uses, development density, landscaping, and access. I would note, since the September Planning and Zoning Commission, the applicant has amended their request. These changes are noted within your conditional zoning ordinance. That is, they have offered to reduce the density from 6.5 acres, or 6 units per acre, from 6.5 units per acre to 6 units per acre. That's a reduction from 455 to 420 units. They've clarified that any townhome dwellings are not to be abut any of the single-family homes along Cox Avenue. They've offered a condition that any type of townhome use has to be at least 600 feet, or 400 feet south of Cox Avenue. And they've also added a condition for the installation of an opaque fence along the northwestern boundary of the site. I would note, anytime we have a request for residential development, staff, as a courtesy, contacts Guilford County Schools, and as part of your staff report, you have information from the school district as to impact on area schools. And I would note, as part of this request, a traffic impact analysis was required. That was reviewed by the city's transportation department, and a summary of that is noted in your transportation table, and we've also attached a copy of the executive summary. Key points I would note about this request: it lies adjacent to the I-74 corridor. In the late 80s, when that corridor was being designed, there was some speculation that an interchange would be placed at this intersection of the I-74 corridor and Jackson Lake Road. There was a property owner at that time that submitted rezoning to allow for industrial use, and that was approved. When the I-70 corridor was completed in 2011, no interchange was installed, and the site has laid undeveloped. The applicant is requesting rezoning, as no industrial proposals have come forward to rezone this to a conditional use residential multifamily 16 district. Key points to note: as far as compatibility with the surrounding area, the applicants offer a condition to prohibit multifamily uses and to restrict the overall density. There was a lot of calls that staff was able to address with the public that RN16 allows 16 units per acre and could allow multifamily. And we specifically noted the conditions that the applicants offered is no multifamily, and they've restricted density to 6 units per acre. They also have offered conditions to limit residential development adjacent to Jackson Lake Road to single family. So those single family homes along Jackson Lake Road, along Cox Avenue would not abut any of the townhomes. They will only abut single family. One of the other findings we looked at is mitigating any adverse impact. To mitigate traffic impact, the applicants offer conditions to limit the number of access points to Cox Avenue and to install improvements that are turn lanes at those access points. This site is within the Random Lake General Watershed area, and they would have to meet the watershed ordinance. There is a stream that runs through the middle of the site. This is a copy of the topography map. For those who are not familiar with reading topography maps, where the lines are further apart, the land is fairly level. Where they're close together, the land is steep. There is a perennial stream that is identified that runs through the middle of the site. Any development would have to meet the City of High Point's environmental standards and stream buffers. With that being a perennial stream, a minimum 100-foot wide buffer top a bank both sides of the stream is required. Finally, in regards to supporting the change in the area, with the lack of direct access to I-74, the site could be developed with industrial use because the current zoning allows that, but those industrial trucks would be traveling through Cox Avenue. So one of the items staff looked at is that an appropriate use type for this area. Along the Jackson Lake Road frontage of the site, the topography is fairly steep, so there will be limited access in that area. So we looked at the situation of it can develop with large box and industrial uses. Most of Cox Avenue is developed with residential uses. Is industrial use the best land use and zoning for this area to impact that residential area? Staff is supporting the rezoning as conditioned to residential, as will be more in line with the development in that area. And when staff notes more in line, we're not talking about that it's going to be the exact same lot size, but you're going from industrial to residential, and that residential use is more in line with the character of development along Cox Avenue. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this request at their September public hearing and recommended approval by a vote of 6-0. The commission stated that the request is consistent with adopted policy guidance because, subject to approval of the plan amendment, the establishment of the moderate density residential land use classification for this area in the proposed CZ RM16 district is supported by the goals and policies of the Community Vision Growth Statement and the land use plan. The commission also stated that the request is reasonable in the public interest because, as conditioned, the requested CZ RM16 district will support development similar to the surrounding area. That is a brief summary on the annexation or rezoning. Are there any questions of Ms. Galante or myself on the plan amendment, annexation, or rezoning?
Any questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Shannon.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now hear from the applicant or applicant's representative.
Thank you. I'm Tom Terrell, 529 West Parkway Avenue here in High Point. I'm representing Leoterra Development, which is represented by Kai Bunker, and our site civil is Eddie McEldowney with Davis Martin Powell. You're going to hear a little bit of the same points, but I will try to go over them quicker. It's a key point here that this property is right up against an interstate. It used to be, as Herb said, it was slated for industrial growth. This now is not going to be industrial development. It's surrounded by a city on many sides. I'll show you a map. It's a very practical location for people who need a place to live and have access to jobs that are outside the immediate community. The actual density is about 5.5 units per acre, so it's from a standpoint of gross density, it's not that dense. And we have, I put down the price point because we were asked that continually or often in our meetings with neighbors. History, it is recommended by staff, and it is recommended 6-0 by P&Z, and we have added a few new conditions after we have had continued discussions with neighbors. You've just seen this site plan that shows the history of the land use plan. I can go on. But the most important thing here is its proximity to an interstate. That makes a huge difference when you're looking for a place to live or for land to develop. This next slide that you're looking at was done by Eddie McEldowney to show how this is surrounded by the city's municipal boundaries and why this area is so close to being in the city as it sits. It is a logical growth expansion. This, again, is a part of a map that I took from the city staff report. This slide right here is the one that tells much. So many of the people who live in High Point don't work in High Point. We also have an in-migration of employees in High Point, of people who live in Davidson, Forsyth, Alamance counties. That makes our interstate connections vital to the economy of the region. And you can see in this slide that I'm putting in front of you right now that this area is very conducive to having homes to reach those different parts of employment. When we were here at Planning and Zoning, we realized, although we had discussed a condition that single-family be annexed to single-family as an appropriate transition that had not been offered at the time, we will, in fact, we did offer that. But what this site plan illustrates is that by conditions, only single-family can be adjacent to single-family, and it's more appropriate to put the townhomes back against the interstate. We did lower the cap. I think it's important here to see how we did the condition of single-family against single-family is really by a measurement from Cox Avenue. And then for the neighbor that sits immediately to the west, we did offer a 6-foot opaque fence at least 200 feet from Cox, and that would cover the place where they live. Now, I want to address transportation briefly. This was a topic of enough conversation at our first neighborhood meeting that we held a second neighborhood meeting just to go into some depth. It was a surprise for neighbors to hear that according to NCDOT statistics, this road, Cox Avenue, operates at about 7 to 8% of its maximum capacity. It doesn't, but the conditions show that we cannot have access to Jackson Lake. There are 3 points of dispersed access to Cox and several dedicated turn lanes to assist with the traffic there. But this is what is, and here is that site plan showing it. I know you probably don't look at the level of service charts when you have access to transportation impact analyses, but this tells everything. If you look at this chart, if you look at that column that says approach under 2021, you'll see A 9.5. A is the highest level of service you can have. And if you go 2 boxes below that, you will see that there is a 2.1 second delay, additional delay, when this entire project is built out. And this is at Baker Road and Cox Avenue. So it's 2.1 seconds is the impact by the traffic impact study. And if you look over at the PM, you see the same thing. You see 10.8 becomes 14.4. That's 3.6 seconds. It's actually a less delay at 2 other intersections. This is Jackson Road and Cox Avenue. This is the one that we heard more neighbors speak about. But you see that it is level of service A built and level of service A as it stands right now for the approach on this. And it only goes up 1/2 of a second for the delay. And then if you go over into the second approach column, it goes from 9.1 seconds to 10 seconds. And it's that 0.9 or 9/10 of a second that takes it from a level of surface A to B. So, and then the final one, you will see essentially the same thing. This is at Cox and all of site access driveways. It's level of service at every single one. Level of service A for anything is excellent. It is outstanding. You will see projects come to you all the time with D, E, and F because that shows that we have growth and we have a lot of traffic. So this is what we show. And our request for you tonight is for a positive vote, all 3, to bring this into the city with the recommendation, to support the recommendation from P&Z and staff. And we're glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yes, Mr. Terrell, the price point that you showed, is that consistent with the existing residential home values in the area? Is that above, below, consistent?
It's substantially above.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Terrell. Okay, I'm now going to open the public hearing and just let Heidi, you have something?
Nope.
Okay, all right. It's confusing, really, to hold 3 public hearings on the plan amendment, the annexation, and the zoning case. So if you have if anyone has anything to say on any of those 3 items, I'll just ask you to come forward to the lectern and give us your name and address. And please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes if possible. Or if you have a group of people and you've kind of chosen one person to speak, that would be better. So whoever would like to come forward, just if there's more than one person, you can kind of make a line along the wall. And if we have one person, can it be longer than 3 minutes? If not, sure, that'll be fine. I'll give you some leeway on that. Okay, yes. Because this is quite a bit of concern. Okay, I understand. Okay.
Hi, my name is Katie Caudle, and I'm here representing Cox Avenue. I live at 1308, 1310 is the property. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, High Point City Council members. My name is Katie Caudle, and I'm here tonight as spokesperson representing the passionate population of the Cox Avenue area. We love our diverse, quiet, close-knit rural neighborhood and are willing to fight for our rights in opposition of Plan Amendment 21-05, Zoning Map Amendment 21-19, and the annexation of properties relating to these 2 amendments and additional property in plan for development across Cox Avenue. At this time, I'd like to request that City Council take note of how many neighborhood residents and property owners are in attendance tonight in opposition of said items. Can they stand?
Sure.
Thank you, everyone. We also have a petition of opposition signed by 104 community members that was presented at Planning and Zoning. We don't have a copy of that with us this evening. Is it still held with Planning and Zoning for you guys in record?
What's the question?
It was, yeah, it's in the record.
Okay.
From P&Z, yes.
Thank you. First off, I'd like to paint a picture of our neighborhood so council can see our concerns through a different lens. The Cox Avenue community is far from being merely ignorant country folk solely resistant to progress. We are a neighborhood of plumbers, data analysts, welders, contractors, small business owners, firefighters, magistrates, postal workers, retired High Point City Transportation Department workers, health, disability, and special education advocates, electricians, retired teachers, arborists, web designers and coders, retirees, veterans, artists, and more. In the past, members have served on a High Point City Planning and Zoning Commission, a High Point City's Board of Adjustment, and as long-time campaign manager for former 14-year City Council member Pete Rowe. We have an active community watch and keep up with each other on the latest goings-on in the neighborhood. We have diverse families of Chamorros, Vietnamese, Pakistani, Caucasians, African Americans, Native Americans, and more. Most of us live in homes on at least an acre or more of land. We enjoy walking our neighborhoods, gardening, raising small livestock, and observing the wide array of wildlife. Our neighbors have generational and first-hand knowledge of the lay of the land in question, how wet it is, and where the varying types of wetlands are located. We know how shallow the bedrock is and how costly and difficult it presents when building. Several of us grew up riding dirt bikes and horses, hiking the trails, and hunting and trapping on the lands up for vote this evening. Our neighborhood is gravely concerned about the irrevocable negative impact such development and annexation would have on our community and surrounding area. Our attorney has suggested we present our concerns to City Council, and they are as follows. The intense density of proposed development and its incongruence with the surrounding community. The present zoning surrounding proposed development is predominantly R5, but the actual layout of units per acre is primarily 1 single-family home per acre, while others are 1 on multiple acres, which is closer to matching a zoning designation of R3 than R5. This makes the increase from low to moderate density and upzoning to CZRM16 a stark contrast to the current residential per acre presentation. Given that trend in the surrounding community to be closer to an R3 than an R5, then how are either of these amendments for change in density from low to moderate or from R5 to CZRM16 warranted? Our community understands that High Point City is working to remedy citywide inappropriate zoning classifications, like the recent zoning changes along Boeger Road in September of 2021. We also realize that conditional use delineation for zoning classification is being reworked due to the 2019 NC New Land Use Law, Chapter 160D, and that the current conditional use classification for industrial for the plot of land up for vote tonight needs to be changed to something more befitting the surrounding area or changed to conditional zoning in replacement of conditional use. We realize that in the land use plan, there are goals for increasing variety of housing types with infill, mixed-use, cluster development, and higher residential densities, but it also states doing so at appropriate locations. This community does not see how this is an appropriate location for such density, given that it is a vast jump in zoning designation and is incongruent with surrounding properties. On Baker Road, one of the roads Cox Avenue intersects, there already exists an apartment complex and a more densely zoned housing development suburb. Baker Road is a heavier trafficked, wider, and longer thoroughfare with a more relative variance in zoning delineations. Also, there's a lack of topography issues and geotechnical data complexities present at these locations. These factors make Baker a more appropriate area for such zoning. The land use plan also states that the appropriateness or compatibility is determined by specific site considerations such as topography, locations relative to adjacent neighborhoods, or residential development patterns, or access and traffic considerations. Therefore, those elements need significant examination, especially since some of our main concerns are related to these details. In the land use goals and objectives number 2, it states an encouragement for development that enhances and preserves established neighborhoods. But how does this proposed development enhance or preserve our established neighborhood? How is the development appropriate to the location within the Cox Avenue community? We currently have a variety of socioeconomic housing properties in our neighborhood and close surrounding area, with prices ranging from $45,000 to about $200,000. There are apartments and a housing development just up on Baker Road, and those developments are not as densely built as the plan for this one. In fact, that development has housing ranging from $150,000 to close to $190,000 with a small yard, where Leoterra's planned homes are attached and marketed at $300,000 to $350,000 per unit, which is not a socioeconomic level supported by our current retail, schools, entertainment amenities, or residential patterns. Our second concern is conflicting and lack of data used for traffic impacts analysis, algorithm calculations, and relating traffic impacts. In the staff report on page 39, towards the bottom under the heading of transportation information in the section for traffic counts, average daily trips, it details Jackson Lake, not Cox, as having 1,220 AADT according to 2019's NCDOT traffic counts. For Cox Avenue, it details none, since NCDOT does not typically conduct counts on local streets. The data of 1,220 average daily trips for Jackson Lake Road was used in the traffic impact analysis algorithm calculations with data for peak hours of Cox at intersections of Jackson Lake and Baker Roads. The data used from Jackson Lake Road from NCDOT is not an accurate presentation of traffic for Cox Avenue and is almost 3 years old. Jackson Lake Road is a much longer thoroughfare than Cox Avenue with less residential homes and a 10-point higher speed limit with a wider roadway and built to withstand heavier traffic. It is not difficult to get accurate numbers for average daily trips for Cox Avenue, and we have firsthand knowledge of this per a former High Point City Transportation Department worker and Cox Avenue community member. This member also does not understand how the transportation data adds up to what would be safe and acceptable for our neighborhood with their prior experience in this type of work. Additionally, the TIA is lacking key data regarding the property across Cox Avenue from the rezoning application properties that is also up for annexation. In the TIA portion of the staff report on page 57, for future traffic conditions based on coordination with the NCDOT and the city, it was determined there were no future roadway improvements or adjacent developments to consider with this study. However, that is not completely true, since Leoterra plans to develop the property adjacent to those proposed for rezoning across the street on Cox Avenue, positioned between 1303 and 1327. The data for this additional development is not present in the future numbers of development in the TIA and would increase how all developments would impact traffic conditions. Therefore, the current TIA is not an accurate representation of how the development would impact future traffic for Cox Avenue. A complete TIA for Cox is a requirement for consideration in the planning and zoning process, since said development may generate 150+ trips during an adjacent roadway's peak or development's peak hours. There are also concerns about traffic increases, creating a more difficult safe entry onto Cox Avenue close to the proposed turn lanes into the development locations in current blind curve areas. Currently, line of sight around the curve situated closest to Baker Road is very limited for residents like Peggy Aswell at 1303 Cox to safely enter the roadway from her drive, and the backup from traffic entering the development via this turn lane would create a challenge for the Caudle and Neal families at 1308 and 1310, and those at 1306 and 1304 to make a right onto Cox. There are similar concerns regarding the other turn lane closer to Jackson Lake. Were any of these considered and taken into account in the TIA? There are also concerns about the increase of traffic seriously limiting neighbors at both ends of Cox from even exiting their driveways during peak hours, since their drives are so close to the intersections of either Baker or Jackson Lake. Cox Avenue wasn't built or developed upon to accommodate such a densely populated development. It is a local road that even NCDOT doesn't consider significant enough to have data for analysis for average daily trips, so why is it being considered adequate to handle such dense development? Another important issue to consider is the inadequate infrastructure of surrounding retail, business, school, and entertainment dynamics to support such socioeconomic upleveling with $3,000 to $350,000 homes, and the negative impacts on already burdened area schools said development density would present. Typically, when a family or individual who has the income to afford a $300,000 to $350,000 property, they look to purchase homes in certain areas of town with relative socioeconomic amenities and schools with good standings. They want close proximity to the Chick-fil-A's, the Targets, the Harris Teeters and Publix, P.F. Chang's, movie theaters, the Chop House, bookstores, boutiques, malls, etc. Our end of High Point lacks those higher-end amenities. We have mostly fast food chains like McDonald's and Biscuitville and Cookout, and grocery stores geared for a lower income market like Walmart, Aldi's, and Food Lion. We do have bowling, a small skating rink, and various dollar stores. Our Burger King is even struggling with staffing to such a degree that it is unable to stay open for normal business hours and closes early. Consumers of said relevant socioeconomic level also look at schools. Both our neighborhood schools for elementary and middle are graded with Ds, 51 and 54, and the high school is graded a low C at 58. The elementary and middle school both have Title I status with a low-performing school designation. The middle school's average class sizes are above both county and state data points. They also have Criminal Act averages above that of Guilford County. The high school proficiency of subject areas lacks any percentage of its population to be career or college ready in the area of NC Math 1 performance, and is below the county and state averages in biology, English 2, NC Math 1, and NC Math 3 performance in grade level proficiency and in career and college readiness. The student enrollment was higher than average for county and state. Also, the averages for short-term and in-school suspensions. The high school's criminal acts at 16.92 or more than double compared to the county 8.42 averages. According to the staff report on page 40 in the school district comments section, the projections of additional student area lacks data for Leoterra's additional development now requiring rezoning classification. The present reality is the elementary school already has seven mobile classrooms, and the current staff report figures put it over maximum student capacity. The additional developed numbers further increase this burden. According to the land use plan on page 6, school crowding is addressed. It states that there is a critical need to carefully coordinate school locations and enrollment capacity with residential development to avoid such negative impacts as school crowding. Therefore, High Point City Council's plan states it is concerned, however, development is in key areas may negatively impact area schools' capacity levels. Additionally, when consumers are looking for higher-priced homes, they research the proximity of environmentally sensitive locations, like the city landfill located near the corner of Jackson Lake and Kivett, and waste or sewer treatment plants like the Eastside wastewater treatment plant off Riverdale, only about 2 miles from Cox. Also, the Martin and Marietta Quarry is just behind the Carter and White families on Jackson Lake Road, and they plan on using that location in the foreseeable future. All of these factors show how the area is lacking in infrastructure desired by consumers in these socioeconomic standings relative to $300,000 to $350,000 homes. Our next area of concern is the inadequate infrastructure of the land to support intense development density. and the negative impact such things as heavy blasting would have on the delicate infrastructure of the aquifer system, which currently supports the community water supply, impacts to adjacent homes' foundations, footings, and septic systems, impact of increased noise and air pollution, as well as the runoff on the Randleman Lake watershed, and increased flooding issues for the end of Moats Court. The properties for rezoning are not the typical plots of land Leoterra has experienced with, where generally topography is mostly flat, like a field with a few trees and forests, with primarily typical soil composition, limited soil saturation, and average depth and density of bedrock. This property has a moderate to severe slope, is blanketed by a variety of wetland delineations, more than what has been indicated on maps presented to you tonight. And the wet, saturated soil sits on shallow, dense bedrock. Our community is aware that in normal circumstances, these elements regarding geotechnical survey data are not considered relevant to the planning and zoning stage for rezoning consideration and occurs typically during planning and development. However, then it's too late and the community is left with a zoning change not compatible to what the land can support and leaves us open to similar rezoning applications in the future. It is vastly more difficult to downzone property than it is to upzone. The immense importance when such data dramatically impacts the degree to which the land can be developed, the drastic measures it would take to do so, and the effect those measures would have on the surrounding community needs careful consideration. This is especially so with the fact that Leoterra's current plan already limits 6 units per acre down from 16, and that trend is expected to continue decreasing in the pre-development stage. One of our neighbors, Billy Blackwell, personally spoke with the company's Leoterra Development enlisted for soil testing on both visits and the geohydro engineers regarding seismic findings. The soil testing representatives explained the soil as wet throughout the properties in the first round of testing, and upon the second round were confused while Leoterra requested retesting since a change in data wouldn't occur, and the results from the second testing indicated the property as still wet. The geotechnical engineers, when asked, said they hit hard rock, bedrock, only 15 feet down, and that typically, when those results occur, more rock lies beneath. They also explained how such conditions are complex and require additional expensive development costs and blasting. According to the Army Corps of Engineers, the use of jackhammer or blasting of dense rock affects the stability of nearby aquifers, thus jeopardizing the community water supply. There were multiple blasting events necessary for the construction of I-74, as many granite veins were encountered, and several area wells are believed to have suffered repercussions from this, with a decrease in water or multiple redrilling events. Additionally, residents are concerned about the impact blasting would have on property foundations, septic systems, and wells. Who will be liable for these damages? Is the City of High Point willing to assume the liability for the irrevocable conditions Leoterra would leave the surrounding community in once development is complete and properties are sold? Can we get assurances that we will be compensated for any damages to properties, wells, or septic due to conditions created should this development proceed? To build slab homes at current or even smaller densities requires sizable areas of flat topography, and the current land has a moderate to severe slope. To mitigate such conditions is problematic at best and quite costly, with the conditions of extremely wet soil and the saturation rate that seasonally increases, as well as adjustment to extreme sloping topography accompanied by shallow bedrock. It's easy to see how development expenses can increase exponentially with this property. Additionally, attempts to infill must be consistent with the original runoff capacity once development is complete. Therefore, such conditions impact whether these properties can even support development, and if built, would negatively impact the neighbor's water supply, septic, and foundations. Our last area of concern relates to sewer system burden at a critical juncture in High Point City's sewer system in close proximity to the treatment plant. It's public knowledge that High Point City is working on upgrading its aging sewer system citywide. It has been struggling for many years to keep up with the breakdown of the system and playing constant catch-up, patching areas that have failed, releasing wastewater along the lines into the surrounding environment. It has been a frustrating, costly, multi-million-dollar feedback loop of temporary patches until assistance funding could be requested, with more leaks occurring and the cycle starting again. In 1998, nearly 16 million gallons of sewage spilled from the city's sewer system, and the city manager made it a top priority. But again in 2020, there was over 1 million gallons of wastewater released. One of the major leaks was just up on Jackson Lake Road. On a part of the line, a neighbor has been trying to get the city to replace for nearly 20 years. The spill was roughly 357,000 gallons on the Richland Creek outfall near 1305 Jackson Lake Road. The untreated water flowed into Richland Creek, a tributary of Deep River, and this is due to be replaced soon. While Davis, Martin, and Powell surveyors were at the rezoning site, they discovered a leak in the newer line running the back of the property near I-74. Billy Blackwell and I investigated the line and located what appeared to be a leak with its own stream, and reported it to the city of High Point. The city employees had a very difficult time locating the leak, despite GPS coordinates and specific location details. City employees were even looking for the sewer line leak where there was no sewer line run in 2 different locations and had to have resident assistance to locate where and how to access the line. The sewer line runs under I-74 and then parallel along the backside of the rezoning property and the interstate. They were, however, very quick to respond and arrive in the rain at the location and were very respectful and professional. The leak's wastewater was running out from underneath an aerial pipe as it came out from the ground. There was a foul sewage smell and filmy, iridescent, unnatural sheen to the waters of the creek it had created days before when it wasn't raining. The city took water samples, but when the results came back, it indicated the water had to be a new spring. Spring water is clean and clear without a sheen or stench of sewage, so something here isn't adding up and needs further investigation. Currently, the leaker spring is no longer running, which too is odd. If there is a spring present, the consistent erosion of the soil supporting the aerial pipe needs examination for a solution before the spring compromises the integrity of the line stability and could cause more wastewater spill. This situation brings up a serious concern for High Point City since the proposed development is planning to tap into the sewer system along that area of line. This area of the sewer system is at a critical juncture close to the sewage treatment plant and downstream from the city, therefore making it of top priority for function. If a problem should arise at the end of the line due to failing wastewater infrastructure from overburdening the system and aging lines, it thereby creates an issue upline for the east side of High Point City. Does City Council really want to gamble with whether the addition of this densely proposed development would jeopardize the integrity and function of the city's sewer system at such a critical juncture? If that were to occur, that would mean 2 main sewer east side collection lines could be down at the same time since the line near the Richland Creek outfall is close to its replacement. We realize City Council sits through numerous meetings pertaining to important issues for the city of High Point, and ours is of no less significance. So we're appealing to the City Council to embody a piece of wisdom from the pages of former 14-year City Councilman Pete Rowe's campaign. Pete Rowe is willing to listen. The Cox Avenue community's major areas of concern are closely related to Leoterra's proposed Triangle Lake development's intense density and its irrevocable impacts on our area. We believe that the proposal presented by Leoterra brings with it too many incongruent situations with the city's land use plan and feel the proposed development needs adjustment to align more closely with its goals and objectives stated therein. There is also a need for a TIA with complete and accurate data and a more realistic analysis of applicable traffic impact for exiting of residents near key intersections and blind curves with hazard identification and a safety risk assessment of Cox. The proposed zoning development plan is already down from 16 to a max of 6 units per acre, with a continuing downward trend early in development that could easily end under 5 considering the geotechnical data. Our community is not against rezoning of the conditional use employment center district to a residential delineation such as an R5 or R3, which more closely reflects the existing community, and from restricted industrial to low-density residential. We are just concerned that any development of the 2 properties up for rezoning lacks the appropriate land infrastructure to support such dense development, therefore the amendments are not warranted. The community of Cox Avenue doesn't want to be left with incongruent zoning, a pre-development mess once Leoterra discovers the severity of land prep necessary for development, nor do we want to be left with empty homes when our area's retail market, socioeconomic standing, and school infrastructure cannot support a $300,000 to $350,000 housing market. Neither do we want to be left with empty houses that would drive our property values down. The purposes of the land use plan supports protecting and enhancing property values in general, not decreasing them. Who will be held responsible when intense blasting impacts our community water supply or adjacent septic tanks, housing footings, and foundations? The application of intense scrutiny regarding these concerns is of grave importance before a decision is merely rubber stamped. It is more preferable to consider all the evidence, data, and concern before making a decision on this matter so that litigation doesn't become necessary. We hope City Council will thoroughly reflect on all these matters presented before you this evening so as to make a well-informed decision regarding these amendments and annexation. I have a few pictures if you guys want to see kind of what.
Pictures. Oh, if you would hand those maybe to Mr. Holmes, he can pass those down.
This one shows kind of what the rock looks like in behind the background, right beside the site. Right to the backside, that's one of the direct creek beds. This is the creek that the pipe that's leaking from here created from the backside. These are pictures of Richard Creek outfall.
Are you finished with your comments, ma'am?
This is on Richland Creek, yes.
Are you finished? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and
The one that looks like it's a creek, not the rock, but the one that actually looks like water, is actually the creek where the leak was in the back of the property.
okay.
And then the smaller pictures are actually of the Richland area.
Would you mind, I'm sure the rest of them didn't forget, but I can't remember your name.
Katie.
Katie.
Otto,
Thank you.
1310 and 1308 Cox Avenue.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and recognize the next person who'd like to speak.
Thank you for allowing us to speak our concerns here tonight. Thank you, Katie, for all the work that you've done for our community. I'm here just to add two short things.
We need your name and address.
My
please.
name is Deborah Sant, and I own 1436 Moats Court, 1433 Moats Court, and 1435 Moats Court. So I'm at the end of Moats Court here, and my property goes over and meets Katie. So Katie's property is in between ours and the proposed property for Leoterra. The two matters that I want to speak about today is, as Katie brought up, the flooding that tends to happen back onto my property. If you look at the map, you will see that I actually own way up almost to the freeway, and the majority of that land right now, and especially with this much rain coming in, is unusable. The flooding has become so immense that it is actually creeping higher than I've ever seen it in 7 years. It's actually approaching our back deck. One of the fears that we do have is the alteration of how everything is coming off of the landfall for this proposed property. Will it come back to my property? Because if you look at the topography, it all leans back to my property. So I do have a big concern about that. Those are all areas that we need to utilize. I do have 8 children, all grown. We have 17 grandchildren that come and stay with us various different times throughout the year. The one child that I am extremely concerned about is our sight impaired. She is totally blind daughter. Around our entire 3 properties, we have a security parameter alarm that is attached to her GPS that she does wear. Should she miscount her steps or get lost, that will come back to the police department, but it'll also immediately notify us. It immediately links us with a chain wearer. A lot of things that she's been doing since she's turned of age, and she's learning outside of school now how to navigate life as being totally blind, is utilizing Cox Avenue as being able to navigate with her canines, as well as her fears, relatively so and relatively understandable, trying to navigate a road. We moved to this area because if we wanted city life, if we wanted 425 houses around us, we would have moved into the city. We didn't move into that because, as the rest of us, We prefer to stay in a low-density area. As Katie has mentioned, we are not against at all development. Development is great in the proper places. Our community does not hold that as a proper place. So what fears us is we do have a few families that have children or family members that have different developmental issues. So we question how is my daughter going to navigate 4 lanes of traffic, basically? You know, the left turns, right turns, things like that. Now, are these things that she has to learn to navigate some point in life? That would be her choice later in life, should she choose to move to a city. But her choice right now is to stay in an area like this. The next point, and this will be the last point that I make, is 3 years ago, we moved here 7 years ago. 3 years ago, we had an issue with a neighbor who had been hunting on our lands, you know, since the 60s. When we found him in our front yard shooting deer towards our home, we had no choice but to come out and explain to him, this is our family dynamics. Our biggest fear was our daughter cannot see you hunting. She will not know to stay away from anything or any object that you may be shooting to. It's illegal to shoot in this area. That ended up with a fight happening 3 months later that we had to call for the first time 911. Because my neighbor tried to protect me and my daughter while my husband was out while this man was on our property illegally hunting and was threatening to shoot us with his gun. I called 911 because part of the Cox Avenue is the ETJ area. The other part now is county area, and now you're asking for a third part to come in that's going to be an annexed High Point. They don't know who to send when we call 911 now. When that happened, literally, Jamestown responded in an emergency because Metro didn't know who to send, High Point didn't know who to send, and the sheriff's department didn't know if they were going to respond. And finally, Jamestown said, hey, I'm 3 miles down the road, I'm coming, you know? So those are things that we also, when we're looking at development, there's things behind the scene that may go unnoticed. And these are things that, what's going to happen when there's 425 families having 2 adults and usually 2 to 3 children per home? What's going to happen when that traffic analysis that was wrong and these people aren't, you know, like, that's at least 2 drivers per home right now. What's going to happen in 5 years from now? What's going to happen in 6 years from now? What is this going to do to our community? And this is not anything that even replicates any part of our community or the size. So we would ask, please, take into consideration 6 homes on a lot. That's just not our community, and it's just not feasible. And neither can a less than a mile road Cox handle that traffic. That will only increase over time. And I thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this item? Yes.
Hi, my name's Colleen Archer. I live at 1327, 1317 Cox Avenue. I've heard Leo Otero say several times that this new development is going to be comparable to what we currently have. That's absolutely not true. Directly across where this development would be is my property that has 1 house on 3 acres. They're talking about 6 houses per acre. That would be the equivalent of putting 18 houses on my property. So we need to look at this as a whole and see that this is not our community. This is not comparable. I used to live in a house. We've been at this property for 4 years. And I used to live in a house that was on 0.3 acres. We bought this property to get out of the city, to get out of the hustle and bustle, and to get more privacy and more space, and that's why we live out there. This would basically turn it into being back in the city, because directly across the street from us, where, you know, my front yard, where I look out, there's gonna be 6 houses per acre, the equivalent of 18 of what my property is, that has 1 house. You know, I just wanted to come up and say that and reinforce that what they're saying as far as the development being equivalent to what we currently have is just completely untrue. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak? Yes, sir. If there's anyone else after this gentleman, if you come on and kind of make a line, that'd be good, so we can keep it moving.
My name is Michael Rich, 1509 Cox Court. The biggest thing that I was wanting to know, if this was in place right this moment at max capacity, how many people is it?
I don't think any of us can answer that. We can
Okay.
ask the developer to address that question if you would like.
Yeah,
I don't know that anybody can say for sure how many people it would be, but.
Well, I mean, just 2, 3 per house, I guess,
Yeah,
or whatever it is.
They'll have an opportunity to respond, so maybe they'll address that question.
Okay, that was my biggest concern. I just wanted to, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rich.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, Mr. Terrell, I'm sure you want an opportunity to respond to the concerns expressed?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Many of the.
It's up to you.
Yeah, I'm just, very, very, very briefly. Many of the concerns raised are engineering issues, they're not land use issues. And these are all addressed by our very competent staff when it comes to where water and sewer comes from. The only thing I would like to correct is to my knowledge, and I've been in all the conversations, we've never said comparable. We have said compatible. And the city of High Point has determined that residential densities at low, in this range are compatible with other residential densities of similar ranges. So that's the term that we have used. I think that's all that we would like to correct. I'm glad to answer any other questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Terrell. I have a couple of questions for, well, I have one question actually for the transportation staff, since you guys are here. There have been a lot of questions about the transportation, or the traffic impact analysis that was submitted, traffic report. Is our staff satisfied with the traffic report we received, or do we have any questions about its accuracy or any issues? Could you speak to that?
No, sir. It was conducted to meet our standards.
Could you just remove, if you're comfortable removing, because it's easier to hear?
Matt Carpenter, Transportation Traffic Operation Engineer. No, the engineer responded to all our concerns adequately. We don't have any issues with the data they provided. We agree with the findings of the study.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
okay.
No, it's not, but I can. I was going to ask a couple questions. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing then. Anyone else on the council have any questions for staff or the applicant or anyone?
I would go, Ms. Cottle, did you present at P&Z?
Yes, but we didn't have all of the information at the time, and planning and zoning was not interested in hearing anything in regards to issues that may come up in the bedrock or wetland issues. They said that only was considered in planning and development later, and wouldn't even consider hearing. And we had like a week to get anything together.
And Mr. Terrell, you said that there were several meetings held with the community. Mainly, did I understand correctly, the second one was mainly on transportation?
The second one was dedicated to transportation. When I say meetings, we had a lot of conversations from people calling as you might know, I give my private numbers to
Yes.
anybody who's interested, and we probably had 8, 9 to 10 calls that came in both before and after the report of neighborhood meetings.
Thank you.
And I have a question. So somebody mentioned like 6 houses per acre, and it's roughly over 70 acres, so 7 times 6, that's 420 houses? Is that what you're planning to build?
420 is the maximum that's shown right now that could be done. But 6 units per acre actually is what we've offered as a cap. The present that we're able to show is 5.5. 5.5 is only 1/2 unit above what the current zoning is in the broader residential area.
So they could do 5 on a large portion of this without a rezoning?
Yes.
Yeah, right, today, they can do 5. So.
And can I ask another question for planning? So, Ms. Cotta, one thing that you said, and I believe that might be Ward 2, but the skating rink and the bowling alley is in Ward 3. And I get a lot of people calling me and saying, what can we do in South Main? What can we do in South Main? And it's where development is demanded. And, you know, I sit through a lot of these meetings, and there's a lot of areas that, you know, that's where the demand is. And I'm like, gosh, I wish I could make the demand come here. So my question to planning is, you know, I understand all the concerns, but is something like this where you have more homes, and it seems to me like $300,000 to $350,000 per home is a pretty good socioeconomic area. Would that hopefully help like a Harris Teeter or some of these nicer, better amenities come to the South Main area?
Herb Shannon again. When staff's looking at zoning requests, by law, we can't get into what a home will or will not sell because we can't enforce that. What we look at is based upon the policies City Council has asked us to evaluate a case on. Is that request consistent with the land use policies? That's our main focus and goal. Hope that answers your question.
In your experience with the planning, have you seen in the past something like this help create more demand for some of these other?
I mean, you're getting into market studies.
Okay.
And when market analysis look at a question, they look at rooftops and so forth in making their evaluation. But once again, planning staff is looking at enforcing the land use policies that you've asked us to look at, and that's been our main focus. And that's what we base our report on.
Anyone else have any questions?
No, Mr. Terrell, have you as the applicant thought about doing any of these studies to show the viability of future development around this type of housing?
Kyle, you want to address the viability issue?
Hey, Kyle Bunker with Leatera. We've built a few self-storage units, but we're strictly just residential outside of that. So we have not looked into any feasibility studies for Harris Teeters or anything like that.
Anyone else on council have questions? Okay. We have to vote on these independently, correct? So I'm going to make a motion for approval of the first item, the plan amendment 21-05. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the plan amendment?
I'll make a couple comments to what Councilman Peters was referring to. With or without a study, we all know retail follows rooftops, and that is an area that would be improved by more amenities. And just for clarification, we can only, the way I see it, we can only deny a rezoning application if it's going to be, a detriment to the city, to an area, based on certain factors, traffic being one of them. I don't see that was established as a negative thing. A detriment to property values or whatever, we would never support anything that would do that. I can tell you just from my experience in the real estate world that putting some $350,000 homes would actually increase property values. So I don't think that that's an argument there. A lot of people don't want something to go next to them if they've lived in a certain area a certain way, but we are in a city, and one of the things we have to look at is the highest and best use of the 55 square miles that we govern over. And so for that reason, that's why one of the reasons I seconded the motion. I do feel like what Leo Terra is going to do is going to be some good. I've seen that developer do some stuff already in the city that I think is going to be a good development. And as far as mitigating any of the watershed stuff, as I think Mr. Terrell said, that's an engineering problem. It's up to them to make sure that any of the watershed issues that Katie, was her name, I believe, spoke to, they have to either mitigate it to make sure that is not worsened and hopefully even better when they're done than it is currently. So,
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Anyone else like to speak on the motion?
Mayor Wagner,
Yes.
this is Councilman Jefferson. I'm curious, and if it's been said already and glossed over me, please forgive me. I'm curious, during the construction, has the developer talked about plans to do its best to mitigate that kind of impact on the community while folks are traveling in and out and construction trucks moving in and out and things of that nature? I mean,
Is the question about blasting?
huh?
I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
I'm curious about level of impact during construction. I mean, are there any plans, if any? I know sometimes you're constrained by what your boundaries are on a property, but are there any considerations for how, at least time of day or location or method or anything here in which we can try to alleviate some of the potential negative impact just from the construction side of things?
Yes,
Are we
those considerations actually always are made. When you don't have construction, then construction comes, nothing is preferred, but this is how we grow. This is how cities go from being one population to one that is larger. And it requires construction. Leoterra actually has a very good track record. I have been working with them for about 4 to 5 years. They reach out to neighbors. They're sensitive to neighbors. I think as you've seen tonight when Ms. Caudle raised earlier questions, we offered her a fence. We've talked to neighbors about offering conditions to back up everything promised. And that will continue with construction.
Thank you.
Anyone else with questions or comments on the motion?
Just, one quick question. There was some infrastructure sewage issues raised by Ms. Caudle. Replacement of sewage pipes. Do we have a report from staff on what the schedule is on those replacements? Do we have any idea? Because I think she raised about the potential of having two.
I think she was talking about the Richland Creek outfall.
Yeah.
And so the aerial crossings, there are 16 aerial crossings. Those are currently under contract. The delay on that project has been materials. And so the plan is to issue the notice to proceed right after the new year. That'll give them time to get all the materials and begin construction.
So it's a possibility that these issues could possibly be solved before.
Now, the area she's talking about is different from the line that we're talking right here. So these are the aerials where actually extend the valleys, and so those sections are not where she's talking about, from my understanding.
Okay.
Now, the one area where the leak was discovered, we were notified by the state, went out and checked it, and it appeared to be clear to us. And so we did run multiple analysis on it, and so our feeling was that it is groundwater. If there are additional areas, we definitely like to be notified, and we can go check them immediately.
But we have shored up that area to make sure that that leak is
Correct.
taken care of.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to add, the leak was groundwater. It was not.
Okay, it wasn't sewage.
Right. Correct.
Anyone else? Okay, so we're voting on the plan amendment 21-05. All those in favor of approval of the plan amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Next is the ordinance, the annexation ordinance, 21-05. I will make a motion for approval of the annexation. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Jefferson. Is there any discussion or comments on the annexation? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the annexation 21-05, please signify by saying aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Next is the zoning map amendment 21-19. I will make a motion for approval, and I will adopt the consistency and reasonableness statement that is mentioned by the staff and adopted by the Planning and Zoning Board. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Hudson. Is there any discussion on the motion? I'll just say something real quick. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and expressing your opinions. It was a long time with COVID before we were able to get folks back in the room. So I want to thank you for coming out and giving your opinions tonight. A lot of the things that were mentioned are going to be handled at the time that permitting occurs. Our city has strong water and sewer rules and a lot of very strong rules regarding surface water runoff. Most of the time, in fact, I can't think of a time when surface water got worse because of a new residential development. Any kind of surface water runoff has to be accumulated and held on site. So that's why you see so many of the stormwater ponds whenever people build new developments. The water gets caught and then it's released more slowly. So typically when new development comes, water and sewer, or not water and sewer, but runoff problems tend to get better as a result of that development instead of worse. Impact on schools and amenities. The school system generally, unless the development is really enormous, the school system is the school system is the correct entity to make sure that they're placing kids in schools where they have capacity. It's not really an issue for the High Point City Council to determine where those kids are going to go to school or how they're going to split their capacity among schools. I think a lot of the issues that Ms. Caudill brought up will be addressed through permitting once construction begins. They'll have to go through a pretty extensive technical review with our staff to make sure that transportation, water and sewer, public services, all of that gets handled correctly according to our ordinances and the state regulations as well. So hopefully that will give you some comfort. But with that, is there anyone else who would like to speak on the motion before I call the vote?
I'm not sure I understand.
Sorry, Siri wants to talk, apparently. It happens sometimes. All right. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion is adopted by a unanimous 9-0 vote. Okay, next item on the agenda is the various Shamrock PD cases. And is staff going to go ahead and present the report on that tonight, or do we just, okay, we're just going to go ahead. The applicant has requested that we postpone the plan amendment 2106 and the two related matters, the annexation case 2106. Okay. 2106 and zoning map amendment 21-20. So they have requested those be continued from the November 1st meeting until the November 15th meeting. And I will make a motion to do that. Is there a second?
Second.
And there's a motion and a second to continue those three items. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. We have several items on our general business agenda. The first one is an appointment of trustee for the Environmental Remedial Trust, and for that, I'm going to turn it over to our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Among some of the agreements that we have regarding the Seaboard matter with the group is the Remedial Trust Fund Agreement. It requires both the group and the city to appoint a trustee. Terry Houck has been the trustee that was appointed by council previously. With Terry's upcoming retirement, we're looking for someone to replace him. Robbie Stone is going to be the perfect candidate for this because he's already been involved in everything. He'll be acting as what Terry was doing for the city prior, which is really the main contact. He attends the meetings, he delivers information back to the manager's office and to the legal department.
Okay. Any questions for the attorney? Okay, I'll make it.
Terry has also signed his resignation. So
As a trustee?
I have that in hand. So
Okay.
after this vote, if you're interested, Mayor, if it's favorable, then you could go ahead and execute the appointment for Robbie.
Okay, thank you. All right. Again, any questions for the attorney? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the appointment of Robbie Stone as our representative on the Environmental Remedial Trustee on the Environmental Remedial Trust regarding Seaboard Chemical Corporation and Riverdale Drive landfill, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Actually, I just made the motion, didn't I?
Yes.
All right, I'm making the motion for approval. Is there a second?
It was really lengthy, though. You did a great job.
Yeah. I got so lost in that long motion, I thought I was doing the approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All right, keep me straight, man. I'll just start throwing from the hip. All right, any discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Next are these are the pretty standard revisions to our meeting dates regarding for 2022. You can see what they are. I'll make a motion for approval of the amendments to our meeting dates. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Williams. Any discussion on the changes to meeting dates?
Mayor Wagner, this is an observation, and in some ways, I think it's a multi-step observation, but I thought of it as I was seeing some of the cancellations for holidays, and this has been a topic of discussion in the past, which is the Juneteenth holiday. As we all know, is a public holiday now federally, and Juneteenth falls on that Sunday this year, and so that third Monday is the day that is a day off in recognition and observation of that holiday. And so the reason why I say multi-step observation is because, number one, I'm not sure if because it's a federal holiday, does that automatically become our holiday? Probably not. But then I guess at a certain point, having the discussion around how we make that a holiday here for our city. And certainly, again, I respect the process, but as I'm thinking about it, I think it's important for us to say it. And perhaps, Madam Manager, if at a certain point we can at least see, because I'm pretty sure this body, before we approve any kind of holiday that becomes a day off for the city and moving council meetings, we probably want to know what that means in terms of ramifications for the city and look at some observations for that council meeting on that third Monday, perhaps being relocated to that Tuesday, perhaps. I don't know. I know we probably don't want to cancel the third Monday of a June meeting and then also cancel 4th of July, because then we'd have, I think, 6 weeks in between meetings. But I'm elevating the observation because I do think we need to look at it. I do know that it's been part of conversations in the past. It is now a federal holiday, and if you look at June 20th, which is that Monday, that third Monday, is actually recognized and observed as a day off by the federal government and probably by many state governments soon. And I think it'll be important for our local government to be able to look at that, consider it, and then at a certain point consider some action for it as well.
Yeah, I think it's something we can go back and look at. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that is budget season, and typically, not typically, we have to pass a budget that late in June, but it is certainly possible. So we definitely need to have a second meeting in June, I think, because of the urgency of possibly needing it to pass a budget. But I certainly would support having a discussion on what we might do around that date.
Mayor, members of council, what we can do is we can go back and look at the schedule with the recognized date being June 20th and looking at what that does to the meeting schedule. We can also benchmark and see what our surrounding cities are doing as it relates to the holiday. I do believe it has been passed in several of our neighboring communities, and bring that back for discussion. It will likely not be at the next meeting in November, just as we're pretty much have that agenda set, but we could probably bring that at the latest at your first meeting in December for conversation.
That's fine.
Thank you.
But I don't think we need to hold up doing these revisions as a result of that, so.
No. I was really just lifting up the observation. I actually had another question, and I think I answered it in my head. We didn't do the October market cancellation, but I guess it's because we don't know dates yet. Is that why?
We didn't have a conflict with those dates.
Oh, we don't have a conflict with the market.
October market.
So this is the second week.
Fourth week, I mean.
We're good.
Chris, you said you got a conflict, Chris?
Oh, we don't.
Chris, you said you don't? Sorry, I'm just making sure. I gotta look out for Chris.
We got him covered.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to approve these revisions to our meeting schedule. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval of the item. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes. Next is a reappointment of Willie Davis. We were all very excited to find out that he is still alive. There was a report in the paper of a Willie Davis passing away this week, and it's my appointment, so I was a little concerned that I hadn't heard from Willie in a while, but I'm happy to reappoint or propose for reappointment Willie Davis to the Human Relations Commission. He approached me in advance, said he wanted to continue in his work, and I'm happy to do that. So I'll make the motion for the reappointment of Willie Davis to the Human Relations Commission.
Second.
It's been seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, Mr. Davis is reappointed. I also will need I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to add two items. One is the reappointment of Meredith Boeger and Charity Bunting to the High Point Housing Authority Board. And the second is regarding an amendment to a resolution that we passed in August regarding Samet Drive.
I'll make a motion to amend the rule.
Okay. Motion has been made to suspend the rules. Is there a second?
Second. Jefferson.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion to suspend the rules to add those items? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of suspending the rules, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? And that motion passes. So the first item is the reappointment of Meredith Boeger and Charity Bunting to the High Point Housing Authority Board. These would be effective December 22nd of this year, and they'd be for 5 years, till December 22nd, 2026. I'll go ahead and make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Okay, next is a motion to amend a resolution that was adopted by City Council on at our August 2nd meeting regarding a reimbursement agreement with Shamrock PD LLC. The amendment would amend the final paragraph, the amount in the final paragraph from $2.5 million to $4.5 million. I'll go ahead and make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second has been made. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion is approved. We have some minutes to be approved.
Motion to approve. Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion or corrections on the minutes? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes. Okay. Anybody got anything to announce prior to adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Councilman Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Peters. Any discussion prior to the motion?
I will say, I know Veterans Day is coming up, and our next council meeting is after that. So to all of our veterans who have served, thank you all so much. To every person who's ever worn the uniform, we appreciate you dearly. Thank you.
And I'll say if High Point University is having their first basketball game in the new arena this Thursday night, get your tickets quickly. be there for history for the first game in the new arena, what I like to call the Q Dome. Apple has the Dean Dome, we have the Q Dome. So, all right, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes, and we are now adjourned.